Apple's released a brand new iOS 11.2.2 update ahead of its iOS 11.2.5 update. The iOS 11.2.2 update is a small release for iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch, but it could have a significant impact on your device's performance. While we wait for the iOS 11.2.5 release date, Apple's released a security upgrade for all devices capable of running iOS 11. The iOS 11.2.2 update is another small update focused on improving the security of Apple's mobile devices. It includes an extremely important fix for Safari users. If you're upgrading from the company's iOS 11.2.1 update, your version of iOS 11.2.2 comes with a short change log and a tiny download. The iOS 11.2.2 update is just 75 megabytes for the iPhone X and it's a similar size for other iPhone models. If you're upgrading your phone or tablet from an older version of iOS, your iOS 11.2.2 update will be much larger thanks to the updates you skipped. The features and fixes from the updates you missed are baked into your iOS 11.2.2 update. The iOS 11.2.2 update is a maintenance release, but it could impact your device's performance. Some of you could see performance improvements, many others will run into problems. Our guide to the new iOS 11.2.2 update includes our impressions of the upgrade, information about the iOS 11.2.2 downgrade status, and a look at what's next in Apple's iOS 11 pipeline. iOS 11.2.2 impressions. If you're currently running iOS 11.2.1, you can get iOS 11.2.2 up and running in about 7 minutes. The iOS 11.2.2 update is less than 100 megabytes. The iPhone X iOS 11.2.2 update, a little bigger than iOS 11.2.1, only took a few seconds to download. The installation process took about 5 minutes on the iPhone X. If you own an older device, it could take a little bit longer to finish up. If you're currently running an older version of iOS, you can expect a longer download time and a lengthier installation. For more on the exact timing for your device, take a look at our iOS 11.2.2 download time walkthrough. We've only been running iOS 11.2.2 for a short time, but here are a few observations. We haven't noticed any major issues with the software. Battery life appears to be normal and we haven't noticed any issues with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. All of our core apps are performing fine and we haven't noticed any major problems with Twitter, Slack, Asana, Gmail, Chrome, or Spotify. We haven't noticed any lag on the iPhone X, but we've been dealing with lag issues on older devices like the iPhone 5s and iPhone 6. While most people should install iOS 11.2.2, those of you using older devices should proceed with caution. If you need additional feedback about iOS 11.2.2, take a look at our reasons to, and not to, install the iOS 11.2.2 update on your device right now. We're in the process of putting together our mini iOS 11.2.2 reviews and you can find them at these links for the iPhone X, iPhone 7, iPhone 7 Plus, iPhone 6s, iPhone 6, iPhone 5s, iPhone SE, and the iPad Air 2, iPad Air, and iPad Mini 2. iOS 11.2.2. What's new? The iOS 11.2.2 update doesn't come with any new features, but it does come with one very important change. The newest member of the iOS 11 family includes security improvements to Safari and WebKit that will mitigate the effects of the Spectre exploit found in most processors. This is the only known change on board the new software. iOS 11.2.2 problems. Apple's intentions are good, but the iOS 11.2.2 update is already causing problems for some iPhone and iPad users. Early adopters are complaining about installation and download issues, problems with first and third-party apps, severe battery drain, and issues connecting to Bluetooth. Again, we've also experienced some issues with the iPhone X's Face ID. If you're dealing with iOS 11.2.2 issues on your phone or tablet, take a peek at our list of fixes for common iOS 11 problems. We've also released tips to improve iOS 11 performance and tips to improve iOS 11 battery life on your iPhone, iPad, or iPod Touch. If you can't find a fix for your issue in those guides, you can try downgrading to an older version of iOS 11. Apple is currently signing off on 2 versions of iOS 11, iOS 11.2 and iOS 11.2.1. This means you can drop back to one or the other if you aren't happy with iOS 11.2.2 and its performance. Unfortunately, you can't drop down to anything older than iOS 11.2. Apple's permanently closed off the downgrade path to older versions of iOS including iOS 10, iOS 11.2.2 jailbreak. Jailbreak developers recently released a working iOS 11 jailbreak for iOS 11.0-iOS 11.1.2. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with Cydia and it doesn't work with iOS 11.2, iOS 11.2.1, iOS 11.2.2, or iOS 11.2.5. If you're currently jailbroken on iOS 10 or below, or you think you might want to jailbreak your phone or tablet, you'll want to avoid iOS 11.2.2 and iOS 11.2.5 beta. For more on the iOS 11 jailbreak status, take a look at our roundup. What's next now that iOS 11.2.2 is here? All eyes are on the update in Apple's pipeline. Apple currently has an iOS 11.2.5 update in beta ahead of an unknown release date. At this point, it's unclear if iOS 11.2.5 is next or if the company will release iOS 11.2.3 and iOS 11.2.4 ahead of it. The iOS 11.2.5 update appears to have more than just fixes and patches on board. It should bring upgrades to Siri and it could deliver Apple's long-awaited AirPlay 2 solution. We expect iOS 11.2.5 to roll out alongside the new HomePod speaker, so keep an eye out for its release as we push into the new year. 4 reasons not to install iOS 11.2.2. 10 reasons you should if you're on iOS 11.2.1. Your iOS 11.2.2 update includes security improvements to Safari and WebKit to mitigate the effects of Spectre. If you're running an older version of iOS, your iOS 11.2.2 will come with a lot more. Apple's iOS 11.2 update fixed several problems, but it also brought problems of its own, including a potentially nasty zero-day iOS HomeKit vulnerability. The vulnerability, discovered by Tian Zhang, allowed for unauthorized control of HomeKit accessories including garage door openers and smart locks. Apple quickly rolled out a server-side fix, but the company restored functionality with the release of iOS 11.2.1. If you skipped iOS 11.2.1 and use HomeKit, you should download iOS 11.2.2. If you skipped iOS 11.2, you'll get a few more patches with your iOS 11.2.2 update. Apple's iOS 11.2 update delivered 11 patches including one for Mail and one for Wi-Fi. The iOS 11.2 and iOS 11.2.1 updates also patched up a widespread security issue called Meltdown. Apple says its analysis suggests it has the most potential to be exploited. Meltdown affects all iOS 11-powered devices, so we highly recommend downloading iOS 11.2.2 if you skipped iOS 11.2, if you skipped iOS 11.1.2, iOS 11.1.1, and iOS 11.1. You'll get additional patches with your iOS 11.2.2 update. The iOS 11.1 update delivered 8 security patches including a fix for a serious Wi-Fi vulnerability called Crack or key reinstallation attack. Crack is an exploit that targets the common WPA2 encryption protocol. If you're just now making to move from iOS 10 or whatever you're on to iOS 11, your iOS 11.2.2 update will come with additional security features. Apple's first iOS 11 update delivered several patches for potential exploits. iOS 11 also comes with new security features aimed at keeping your data safe. Elcomsoft recently discovered a change to the way iOS deals with trusted devices. In iOS 11 you can't establish trust with a PC using fingerprints alone. You'll also need to put in a passcode in order to gain that trust. If you skipped older versions of iOS, your iOS 11.2.2 update will come with an even longer list of security patches. Apple's iOS 10.3.3 update delivered 24 security patches addressing potential issues with contacts, messages, notifications, and Safari. It also included a patch for a potentially dangerous Wi-Fi exploit called BroadPWN. If you skipped iOS 10.3.2, you'll get 23 additional patches in iOS 11.2.2. And if for some reason you missed iOS 10.3, you'll get 60 security patches with your version of iOS 11.2.2. If you want to protect the data you store on your iPhone, iPad, or iPod Touch, you should make your move to iOS 11.2.2 soon. This is particularly important for those of you running older versions of iOS.